Hello, and welcome back to another session with me, the Pantless Planner. Today, we're going to talk about event budgeting basics. This is one of my favorite topics because it also includes Excel. Are you excited? So today, we're going to talk a little bit about what is budgeting. So a financial planner roadmap to determine for a determined individual, company, project, or event, guidelines and capabilities for the endeavor. In other words, it is, what I said, it's a roadmap. It guides you to make sure that your goals are achieved, right? So, what are some things that budgeting can help us with? It's resource management, right? If you know how much you can spend, you know how much you can buy. Risk management, if you know your end date or pull the plug date, right? If you know that if you haven't made 100 sales or 10 sales to host that retreat or conference or event, you know that it's better to pull out now versus have to face 1,000, 100, 10,000s of dollars on contracts that you've already signed. And then with decision making, right? How do you give priority and allocate resources to certain things, and what has priority? So key items that need to be in every budget, right? Whether it is a project, a hotel, a conference, a birthday party, is expenses, revenue, and buffer. So expenses is everything that you're going to incur. So the caterers, the decoration, the music, the seats, the pamphlets, the hotel, the travel, anything under the sun, right? And writing it down is not doing yourself a favor. So many times, even with big projects that I've consulted on, people are like, oh yeah, but that's not that much. But then when you actually add it up, it's a huge chunk of your budget. So it's really important to measure and look at what is going to go out. Now, I know that so many people, and there's so many conversations going around now, I think more than ever before, about money and finances and management. And a lot of people shy away from budgets because they're afraid to look at the numbers and look at money, right? So bad news, just you need to get over it. It's not a personal thing, right? So you need to stop adding your personal feelings into when you're creating a budget for your event and make sure that if you want your event to be successful, you put away that block that you have around money and look at it from a really non-emotional state, right? I love numbers. I love Excel because I say numbers don't lie, right? 2 + 2 is 4. 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 is 4. It's always going to be 4, right? Unless algebra and letters, but that's not the point. So make sure that you're counting your pennies, that you're looking at everything that's going out, because then it's going to tell you what needs to come in, right? Revenue doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a for-profit event, right? It can just be, I was given X amount of money for this anniversary party and it's $500, right? Where is that money coming from? How much do you have? And then if you are trying to make money, how much are you making in sales, right? And how many sales do you need to have in order to cover these expenses? And then buffer. People call it contingency, backup, emergency fund, buffer. Basically, it needs to be about 10% of your event. So whatever your expenses are, you want to add another 10% at the bottom, and then that's going to be your contingency. So if you have to refund and you didn't have it in the policies, if someone gets sick and you have to hire someone, right away, if there's traffic, anything can happen. Events are a beautiful and chaotic thing. That's what I love about them. But the more you have a safety, right, which is a buffer, or a plan, which is what I'm hoping to teach you all of how to plan better, the better your event can go, right? And so then when things pop up, they're more of a challenge and, ooh, how can I solve this puzzle versus I'm going to go into full meltdown because I don't know what to do. Okay, so common mistakes that are made in budgeting is not budgeting at all, right? It's just a free for all, receipts in a bag, pulled it out of my pants, not making a baseline, right? So if you don't know how much you have to spend, you're just going to spend willy-nilly, right? And so this might touch a personal chord again with people if you're not really organized in budgeting. in your personal life, you're probably not going to be super excited to do it for your event. And that's okay. There's ways that I can help you, but you have to budget. You have to have a baseline, right? You have to say, this is the boundary, this is the roadmap, this is what we can have, and this is the container. So, story time. I was going to help someone with a retreat, and they said, the retreat price is X amount. And then they showed me the place they wanted to rent. And I did just simple math. And the capacity of this space, right? So it was only about like 12 people that could fit in this space, with the pricing per head that she gave, wasn't actually even going to cover this space itself, right? And then she wanted to give food and bring in, all these other add-ons, where I'm like, you're going to be deeply in the red, right? We're not talking like $100. We're talking about probably 10,000, because there was no budget, right? So the budget is going to tell us how much to charge, but also how much can we spend? And then where is that middle if we need to adjust? Not counting pennies. Every dollar, every cent, every penny, every euro, every whatever currency it is counts. Because when we do personal budgets, which is what we're more familiar with, whether we avoid them or not, pennies don't matter, right? We have those round up things in our bank account that just kind of rounds up the pennies. And then, oh my gosh, look, you have all this money. But it's the same for an event. Oh my gosh. And then look at all this money that's gone out. Also, we're multiplying it by multiple people, right? So usually when you do a personal budget, you only have to care about you or your family or your immediate people that you're going on a trip with. When you're doing a retreat and you have 50 people or 30 people or 10 people, those pennies start to become $1, and then those dollars becomes tens of dollars, and then they can easily snowball into hundreds of thousands. So making sure that not only they're included in your budget, in your revenue, but also in your expense. Another big no-no or ouchie that's going to affect your budget is fees, right? We forget about fees. There are certain fees that we can't get around because of the world that we live in. So bank fees, right? So whether you're making international payments, you're making payments on a card, whatever it is, the banks have fees. Wire transfers have fees. I was part of an event recently, and the wire transfer alone, right, we're sending thousands of euros, was about $250, right? And it was like, oh, ouch, right? Because we had to send about 4 transfers. That's $1,000 right there in our budget. It adds up. Credit card fees, CC fees. So these are like transaction fees. So if you're using Stripe, if you're using Eventbrite, any of those add up really quickly. Another event I was a part of, we decided to do Eventbrite as one of our things. And each ticket, we were paying about $30 to $40 in fees, right? When you multiply that by 10, that's $400. But when you multiply that by hundreds, which was the goal of the event, we're talking about $4,000 in fees, right? So make sure that you're looking at all of your fees, like credit card fees, like for Stripe or PayPal or Venmo, or however you're taking money, you're always going to have a fee to take in money and then possibly a fee to take out money, right? So just make sure that those are calculated. You can look, there's a bunch of resources of, how to calculate them, right? And a lot of times they're percentages, but a lot of times they're a percentage plus a dollar number. So make sure that you're taking that into consideration. More no-nos. Not updating your budget. So first, some people just don't do it. And then some people do it and just put it in a folder somewhere on their desk or use it as like a coaster. Don't do that, right? Maintenance of a budget is crucial. It's a living thing. It's a living and breathing thing, because based on how much money you're making, it adjusts how much money you're spending. Based on how much money you're spending, you're going to need to have more money that you're making, right? It's like a give and take on both sides that you need to be consistently updating it, right? You're going to have a preliminary budget always, a baseline, right? So like, this is ideally how much I would want to spend. Let's say we have $10,000. I want to put $3,000 for the place. I'm going to put $2,000 for food, $2,000 for events, and then $2,000 for buffer. Let's just say, I think that's 10. If you spend $2,000 on the place instead of $3,000, you have an extra 1,000 to spare, maybe for marketing, maybe for gifts, maybe for something else. If you spend $5,000 instead of $3,000, you have $2,000 less. And so you have to adjust and figure it out. And this is mainly because even me, who's been working in the field for 18 years and managing, I mean, hundreds, if not thousands, I mean, thousands for sure, if not hundreds of thousands of budgets in my time, and updating them multiple times, right? I usually update a budget depending on the event once a month up until we get to like those 3 months out. And then like every other week is kind of a good timeline. You're going to see that even though you have a baseline, right? Like if you're doing this for the third or fourth time, you kind of know your numbers, right? But if you don't know your numbers and then you negotiate and you want maybe a bigger place or a better place or a more intimate place or a, you know, wilder experience, you're going to have to adjust, right? So your preliminary is always, this is what I would like to have. And then your budget, as you adjust it, is going to tell you what you can have. And so again, adjustment on performance. Adjustment on performance of, oops, that's wrong. Based on the performance of your event, right? If it's sales, if it's RSVPs, like let's say it's a wedding, right? Let's stay away from corporate for a bit. Let's say it's a wedding. If you have a budget for a wedding and then all of a sudden someone comes to you, your parents, and are like, you have to invite your 20 cousins, that's going to need adjustment, right? Or you send out the 20 invites and no one RSVPs, or everyone says no. That's an adjustment right there that needs to happen, right? Performance of people coming in, people coming out, how much revenue am I making, how many sales am I making, things like that, which is similar to updating the budget, but it's also based on your goals, right? So having unclear goals and unclear KPIs is key performance indicators, right? If your goal is to have the most amazing wedding ever, what does that mean? If your goal is to have a jam-packed conference, what does that mean? If your goal is to have a really small transformational retreat, what does that mean and look like, right? Because sometimes when you're adjusting based on performance and updating your budget, you're going to have to sacrifice things or compromise on things. But as long as your goals are clear, you can always adjust to make sure you meet your goal. Story time again. I recently was part of an event. We were really big. We overshot the amount of sales and attendance we were going to have. And so we had to remember what our goal was, which was to gather people, to have a good time, to share. So we were able to adjust and choose a smaller spot and, you know, renegotiate the contract and get, you know, some leeway there, meaning we still could pull off the event and make sure that goal was met, right? If our goal was just to have 500 people, we were going to have to put a lot of money into marketing or doing something else. But since our goal was more of a intimate, feel good, have people come together for the first time in a really long time, we were able to adjust, right? And so it's like we compromise on space, we compromise on maybe things that we're giving them, but then we still meet our goal, right? So just make sure that you're flexible there. Tips when budgeting. So documents. Use a software, Excel, Google Sheets. We love them. I have another video all about how I use Google Sheets in planning and budgeting as part of it. Track all the ins and outs, right? We've talked about this like 3 times, but I guess 3 times the charm. Ins and outs. How much money is coming in, what's going out, or and when it's going out, right? Also, have it all in writing. I cannot tell you how important that is. One of my mentors always said, paper talks, and it does. And even though we live in a digital world, you can still have it in writing in an email. But then if someone wants to change the price or change the date or do something like that, that happens. You know, most of the times you're going to have vendors and amazing people working with you, but maybe there's just a confusion that happened. When you have it in writing, it's solidified, right? Especially your numbers. I recently helped again with another event, and the person was like, oh yeah, because this is the fee. They told me. And I was like, great, where did they tell you? On the phone. I was like, okay, well, when I see it in writing, I'm going to add it to my budget. When I see the number that they are giving us, we'll add it to the budget. But until then, I'm not going to take anyone's word. And it's not out of distrust, it's more of protection, because maybe they go back to the drawing board and they realize that it's going to cost more to do what they did or less to do what they did, right? So have it all in writing. Triple check. Be like Santa, but better. So he checks twice, we're going to check 3 times, right? So check your numbers 3 times. Check your formulas 3 times. When you're updating your budget, double check, triple check. Have another set of eyes is phenomenal, right? Like as long as they're understanding and they're in the process with you and consistently updating it with you, that's great, because sometimes we can stare at a computer or stare at paper and we kind of lose sight and everything just starts to mush together and look the same. And that can happen with budgeting. So on top of taking breaks when you're checking, having another set of eyes helps. Avoid manual math. I put that in because I don't doubt that you're an intelligent person and you can do the math, but having math in the formulas, like in the software in Excel, you can double check it and it does it for you. Also, when you do manual math and you just add in numbers, especially if you're using Excel and Google Sheets, and I keep on saying that because there's no other way really. Like that just, it's what needs to happen. That if you're just adding in numbers and they're not in a formula, and let's say someone else is checking it or you're updating it and it's not updating itself, it can create issues, right? Communication. Inform your team. How are you doing with your budget? Where do you need more support in your budget? What's happening? What can we do? What, can they find? Communicate with your vendors, right? Hey, I need an extended payment date, or hey, can you just give me a discount here? Or, what can you do for this price, right? Instead of, vendors aren't trying to gouge you. And I'm going to do a video about them soon. Vendors are trying to help you most of the time, right? Like grand majority of the time. So if you're like, hey, I only have $200 to do this, but I really want to do this. Can we figure this out? Then they're going to help you, right? But you have to be open and clear and communicate with them. And then negotiate. Now, negotiation is not a ultimatum. A lot of people take that stance. A lot of people watch, I don't know, Suits or things like that. I'm watching that now. And they think that it's like, you're going to take this number and it's done. And you have 30 seconds to do it. That's not what's happening. A negotiation is, hey, I have this much, or give me an offer. Let's see, can you trim this here? Can you do this instead? Can you, so don't be afraid to negotiate. Don't be afraid to ask for what you need and hold strong to that and know what your deal breakers are. Creativity. Now, the IRS is going to be like, she's sitting here talking about being creative with your budget, your money, but it's not on the way they think. Look for deals, right? Like look for, a lot of people do DIY stuff for their weddings because it's cheaper to do. And it doesn't mean it's lack of quality. It's just, if I have time, I can invest that versus investing money. Ask sponsors, reach out. Maybe it's your dad paying for the open bar. Maybe it's your local coffee shop giving you scones, whatever it is. Like you can get in-kind sponsorships, which means that they're just trading product. And that can actually make a big impact on your budget. So if you had to feed everyone, and before the price was $12 a head, for snacks, and then someone gave you half of the snacks, you're saving $6 per person times 10, let's say that's $60 right there, that maybe you can put into marketing, or maybe you can give to a musician or whatever it is, or maybe you just pocket it, who knows? Adjust and be creative. So again, in updating your budget, we're needing to adjust, right? So, okay, so we can't do that, but what would have the same impact as that, but cost less? Or what can I get, or who do I know? And so in adjusting, be creative. Don't be like, oh, we can't do that anymore. So, well, that's just done. It's down the toilet. There's no point. Be like, okay, that can't happen, but what is another way that something similar, or it still can happen without me costing me money? Rainy day. So important. Also check the weather for your event. You may live in a place where it snows or rains, but if it is in a tropical location, it's going to rain at some point. So make sure you're checking the weather. Emergency and contingency fund, yet again, because so many people forget it, and it's really important. It will save you. And if you don't use it, it's more income, right? It's more profit, or you can tip people, or you can add it to something else. Like you can decide what to do with it afterwards, but during and in an emergency, it's really important. And I put emergency in there because if you're in a retreat and it's international or something like that, and someone goes into anaphylactic shock, hopefully they don't, but someone goes into an allergic reaction shock and you need to just pay an ambulance or pay someone to help them get to safety, you have that money. And it's not like, well, let me see what credit card is not overdrawn as I was traveling with 20 people in another country. Refund policy. This one can really get you. So if you don't have a refund and cancellation policy, especially after COVID, we saw this, or during COVID, our industry lost trillions, and we're talking hundreds of trillions of dollars, the event and hospitality industry. And because our refund policy and cancellation policies were a bit lax or not descript, right? So there is also something called event insurance that you can get, and not just for the location and the event. Like usually in the US, they ask for event insurance, which is if something happens at the event, but you can get like event cancellation insurance that it will help you cover. So let's say you get wildly ill or COVID happens again or something like that. It will help you cover everything you're having to cancel, all of the contracts that you've signed, right? When you're doing an event, whether it's small or not, Airbnb or a little bit larger, or even a birthday party or an anniversary party and renting a space, you're on the hook for a contract, which is usually a lot more money than you would just regularly spend, right? So having an event insurance, cancellation policy, and refund policy are really going to help you. Refund policy, it can be, on a case-to-case basis, but make sure that it's clear on the event page and the information. Because if everyone wants all of a sudden a refund, but you already paid out that money, you have to come up with it some way if it's not clear, right? Cancellation policy, if you cancel the event, what's going to happen? If they cancel coming to the event and don't show, what's going to happen? So in the comments, I'm going to leave a link to my budgeting template that I sell at a special price for you guys who got this far in the video. And it just has everything you need to basically implement all of this. It has a structure and a template and a video on how to go through. It has some of the line items you're going to need, definitely has the emergency and contingency fund, and it has a report that's already made for you that you can just kind of plug and play and have guidance on how to budget for an event. And since it is in Google Sheets, surprise, surprise, you can copy it and reuse it as many times as you need. So thank you for watching. This is where I say, don't forget to subscribe, and I hope you enjoyed the video.